Beneath the streets of Moscow, hidden under layers of reinforced concrete and steel, the central command complex was alive with purpose. A low hum filled the underground halls, servers, ventilation, distant turbines, all merging into a steady rhythm that mirrored the pulse of the operation unfolding above. The walls were lined with massive screens projecting satellite feeds, infrared scans, and encrypted communication grids. The red glow of the monitors gave the room a warlike hue. General Sergei Sokolov stood in the center, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes fixed on the primary display of 16 bright coordinates blinking across the map of Ukraine. His expression was unreadable, carved from decades of service and discipline. Around him, staff officers moved swiftly, murmuring into headsets, verifying codes, synchronizing flight paths. Phase 1 complete, announced Colonel Zorin. All assets on standby. Awaiting final clearance. Sokolov gave a single nod. Initiate Operation Perun. Authorization Level 1, execute. A wave of motion swept through the room. Deep in Russia's air bases, from Engels to Kaluga, engines of long-range bombers ignited. On-screen camera feeds showed crews climbing into cockpits, their faces illuminated by red emergency lights. In the Arctic seas, submarines armed with Kaliber missiles received launch commands. Within minutes, Moscow's skies trembled faintly, not from fear, but from the raw power of hundreds of tons of thrust cutting through the atmosphere. The launch notifications lit up the main screen one after another. Iskander launched. Kaliber launched. Garand 2 units airborne. Sokolov's calm voice broke through the static. Confirm all trajectories. Maintain silence protocols. This is not a show, this is precision. A moment later, the first confirmation arrived. Impact, Poltava sector. Secondary explosions detected. Another followed. Lviv logistics hub destroyed. No civilian interference recorded. The room remained silent, professional. No one celebrated. This was not triumph, and this was execution of duty. Sokolov leaned over the console, studying the updated satellite overlay. 16 locations. Neutralized, Zorin whispered. Then Kiev's plan ends tonight, Sokolov replied quietly. He turned to the operations table, giving one final order. Archive the command log. Code word, Perun strike. Inform the president. Outside, the city of Moscow slept under calm snow, unaware that history had just shifted beneath its feet. The night had given way to a gray dawn over the rolling fields of the Belgorod region. Frost clung to the tall grass and the air bit sharply against the skin. Beneath layers of camouflage netting, the Iskander missile regiment lay silent, its launchers angled toward the sky like sleeping beasts. Soldiers moved quietly between them, breath visible in the cold air, their movements precise and mechanical. Lieutenant Andrei Orlov stood beside the lead launcher, eyes fixed on the digital display of his control terminal. His face was pale from the cold and lack of sleep, but his voice remained steady. Final target verification, he ordered. The technician beside him confirmed coordinates, repeating each number in a clipped tone. The system beeped, awaiting the last command. Orlov's radio crackled. Command to Falcon 3, authorization confirmed. Execute at 0600 hours. He pressed the final key. Instantly, the missile came alive. Hydraulic pistons adjusted, gyros aligned. The targeting computer hummed as it locked onto its distant mark. The earth seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a deafening roar, the first Iskander tore through the fog. Its tail flame illuminated the forest edges, painting the landscape in orange. A second missile followed seconds later, leaving behind a thunderous echo that rolled across the steppe. The men watched in silence, their faces glowing in the reflection of the fading fire trail. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Orlov quietly removed his headset and muttered, "Flight confirmed." Inside a nearby command tent, operators tracked the missile trajectories in real time. "Impact in 8 minutes, someone reported. Secondary launch units ready." The radio buzzed again with encrypted chatter. 16 targets confirmed, neutralized. No enemy reserves responding. Orlov exhaled slowly. The tension that had gripped him for days began to fade, replaced by the quiet awareness that they had just executed a strike that would ripple across the entire front. He walked outside, letting the icy wind sting his face. Snow began to fall, light thin flakes drifting onto the smoking launch pads. Around him, soldiers stood silently, watching the white cover settle over the ground as if erasing the traces of what had just happened. In that still moment beneath the cold Russian sky, they all knew that history had turned another page. Deep in the pine-covered hills of the Bryansk region, hidden beneath layers of reinforced steel and earth, the regional intelligence post buzzed with quiet tension. Outside, snow fell steadily, muffling every sound except the low hum of generators. Inside, the main operations room was filled with a soft green glow from radar screens and the rhythmic tapping of keyboards. Major Elena Petrovna, head of the SIGINT division, leaned over her console, headphones pressed tightly against her ears. Her short, dark hair was damp from the humidity of the bunker, and her voice carried a calm authority as she gave orders. Filter all traffic between Kiev command and field sectors. Prioritize any signals marked reserve deployment. Across the room, analysts sat in tight rows, monitoring intercepted transmissions from across the border. A young operator raised his hand. "Ma'am, incoming encrypted," burst from the Kharkiv region. Multiple distress calls. Petrovna approached, listening carefully as the translation came through the speakers. "We need reinforcements. Logistics cut off. Fuel reserves 0. Request air cover. Anyone respond?" The message repeated 3 times before fading into static. Petrovna exchanged a glance with her deputy, Captain Smirnov. "No reserves," she said quietly. "The entire line is fractured." On the main screen, satellite images refreshed in real time. Rail depots in flames, power grids darkened, communication towers silent. Red circles marked every confirmed strike location. "Perun was successful," Smirnov whispered. Elena nodded, typing her report with precision. "Enemy logistical framework incapacitated. Command and control breakdown confirmed. Morale collapse imminent." She sent the report through the secure Moscow channel and turned back to her team. "Initiate secondary phase monitoring. If Kiev attempts to reroute communications, I want to see it before they do." For a long moment, the bunker was silent except for the faint static of intercepted frequencies. Then a distant rumble echoed from outside. Thunder, or perhaps the far-off echo of missile launches. Petrovna stepped outside briefly. The cold air hit her face like a slap. From the ridge, she could see the vast expanse of forest stretching toward the Ukrainian border, shrouded in fog. The world seemed still, deceptively peaceful. She whispered to herself, "We didn't just stop their plan. We erased their line of communication." Then, she turned back toward the bunker's dim light, ready to process the next wave of intelligence. Morning sunlight filtered weakly through the heavy curtains of the Kremlin's Situation Hall, casting long shadows across the polished floor. The air was thick with quiet authority and that particular stillness that followed great decisions. Senior generals, intelligence chiefs, and cabinet ministers stood around a long oak table, folders closed, waiting. The hum of secure projectors and distant footsteps were the only sounds. The tall wooden doors opened. President Vladimir Putin entered with deliberate calm, his expression unreadable. He moved to the head of the table, placing his papers down without a word. "Let's begin," he said simply. General Sergei Sokolov stepped forward, his uniform crisp, his demeanor composed. He activated the main screen. A digital map appeared, showing 16 red markers blinking across Ukrainian territory. Each marker represented a site that no longer existed. "Comrade President," Sokolov began, his tone controlled, "all targets designated under Operation Perun have been neutralized. Impact confirmed on logistics hubs, command nodes, and energy facilities. No civilian interference reported. Kiev's reserve deployment capability 0. The room remained silent. Only the faint buzz of the projector broke the tension. Putin's gaze moved slowly across the map, his fingers tracing the borderlines. "And enemy response?" he asked. Colonel General Morozov replied, "Minimal. Communications collapsed within 2 hours of the initial strike. NATO is holding emergency consultations, but no direct action detected. We control escalation." Putin nodded once, then looked to the intelligence director. "Public reaction? Western media, chaos. Kiev is silent. Internally, our information channels are stable. Confidence remains high," came the response. The president leaned back, exhaling slowly. "Then it's done. Ensure all units remain on defensive alert. No provocations, but no hesitation, if challenged." His words were soft but carried the weight of command. Outside, through the tall Kremlin windows, Moscow appeared calm. Snow fell over the Kremlin towers, settling on the golden domes of cathedrals and the cobblestones of Red Square. The city went on, and commuters, schoolchildren, the hum of everyday life, unaware that a major strategic shift had unfolded in the hours before dawn. As the meeting adjourned, Sokolov closed his folder, labeling it Perun Strike, classified. The operation had ended as it began, in silence, precision, and control. Far below the Kremlin, in the command network's digital archive, a single entry appeared. Status completed. Result: strategic dominance.